Hi there. Welcome back to the Out of the Cave podcast with Lisa Schlossberg. I'm your host, Lisa Schlossberg, a licensed social worker, certified health coach, personal trainer, and yoga instructor. If you, like I have, struggle with your relationship with food, eating, and body image, I am here with this podcast to guide you into healing the relationship you have with yourself through a trauma-informed, holistic, and mind-body-soul approach. Together, we can support you in building a lifestyle of more peace, freedom, safety, and power. Hello again, and welcome back to the Out of the Cave podcast. This is me, Lisa Schlossberg, and today, before you get into this episode, I had to come here with some announcements. There are multiple announcements that I need you to have on your radar today. So, number one, what I want you to know about is the free live trauma-informed restorative yoga experience that will be happening this Thursday. If you're listening to this podcast in real time, I am hosting this at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, May 14th. And the intention there is to really take a lot of what we have been talking about here with the nervous system and the mind-body connection and feeling safe in your skin, and not just talking about it, but really giving you the opportunity to experience it, practice it, and embody it. So if what I have been sharing over the last few weeks has been resonating with you and you want to come join me live virtually this time, that is available to you this week, and I'm really excited about it. So you can follow the show notes for that. That's announcement number one. Announcement number two is that if you sign up for the Omega Retreat before May 15th, which is also the day after the yoga class, so this Friday, again, if you're listening in real time, you will get a free one-on-one coaching session with me for an hour. We can use that before the retreat to prepare. We can use that after the retreat to support you in integrating the experience. But I want you to know that if you sign up for the retreat, you will get a free coaching session with me. You can also follow the show notes for that. The third announcement is basically the same thing, that is just a reminder to come to Omega, the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York, July 12th to the 17th, to join me live in person this time, all 5 days. Another thing I'm super excited about, so I have to keep reminding you. And then lastly, I don't know which one of these I'm the most excited about, but it might be this because it's a brand new thing. That is the Patreon that has been now live for a few weeks. We are going to have the first live Q&A community discussion call. Also, that's going to be happening next week. So next Thursday, again, if you're listening in real time, that is when that will happen. So if you join the Patreon, you can also follow the show notes today. If you join the Patreon, you'll see the option for $25 a month. You will get a bunch of bonus content, and you'll also have access to the once a month live call with me to discuss what we're talking about here in more depth, get your questions answered, and just come jam with other Out of the Cave folks. So those are the four things. The yoga class happening this week, Thursday the 14th. Free session if you sign up for Omega by the 15th. Come to Omega July 12th to the 17th and join the Patreon and come hang out with me next Thursday live. So those are the things I want you to know about. Having said all of that, I hope you love this episode and I hope you have the best week of your whole life. Love you. Bye. Hello again, and welcome back to the Out of the Cave podcast. This is me, Lisa Schlossberg, and we have made it to magical number 22 of this solo series. So, welcome back. As usual, I'm very excited to be here, and once again, we have a lot to cover. We are back with the microphone, and we are still getting over this cold or whatever it is. So I'm a little bit stuffy, but I'm less stuffy. So progress is progress. Before we dive in today, I'm remembering my announcements for you. Number one, the Patreon exists. So here's your next reminder that you will probably be getting for the next few weeks at least. Come join me on Patreon. Donate to this podcast if it has served and supported you at all, please. And Omega. The Omega retreat is coming up. I feel like it's going to be here in no time because that's usually how summer works. July 12th to the 17th at the Omega Institute in upstate New York. Please, please, please come join me to do some of this work in person. 5 full days in a very magical space. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. Follow the details and the links in the show notes if you want to come. Okay, now, having said that, what I want to do today is come back to texts from Bob. I think that this is, there's potential that this is going to be like an entire series within the series. The updates that I keep getting from my friend, who we are calling Bob, they're just, it's like, it's too good not to share with you. Because again, I do hope that this can serve as inspiration. So the text that I got from Bob, and he doesn't even know yet. I did get permission. I have his consent to share these things publicly, but because I record these a few weeks before you hear them, he doesn't even know that I have done this yet. So, it's just, this is a very natural, organic, like ongoing conversation him and I are having. He is not doing this to perform is what I'm saying. He doesn't even know that this is being shared. But the text I got from him last week was, it's easier to co-create in my world when I'm safe in my bubble. Which first, again, is like, that is everything. That you can be in this relationship of co-creation when you feel safe, right? You don't have to have total control and certainty over every single thing because you feel safe to be here and to really be in trust and belief and faith. It requires some safety, and it's easier to access that co-creation, that high involvement, low attachment when you feel safe, and using the bubble as a way to practice that. And then his follow-up, which again, I really appreciated, I'm just reading this directly. He said, visualizing my bubble, stopping cars and trains and stuff really helped the safe space concept hit in a way that hadn't for me before. And so this is where, you know, at some points at retreats, I will have conversations around, like we talked about in the previous episode, you need language that resonates with you. And so some people don't resonate with the word safety or feeling unsafe. And so what I did I remember one retreat a couple of years ago was have a conversation about if the word safety doesn't really land for you. And it didn't for me for a long time, because when I would hear things around, you know, feeling safe or being safe or embodying safety, my logical cognitive brain was always like, I don't understand. I know I'm safe. Like, I know there's no saber-toothed tiger. It didn't make sense to me that, you know, I didn't know about things like polyvagal theory in the nervous system, but in a general sense, I didn't feel unsafe. It was honestly so my baseline that it was not even on my radar. So why I'm saying that is, it's, again, like I said last time, we're working with energy. So it doesn't need to be the word safety, but whatever brings you into that energetic experience of embodied safety. And so what I did at a retreat was again, open up this conversation of like, some people resonate with the word safe, but what is it for you? And that's where we would talk about, you know, one person would say, to me, the word is relaxed. Some people will use the word comfort. Some people will say peace, ease, releasing. Like there's this, you know, and again, we're going for the physiological impact of that rather than just a specific word. And so some people would say, you know, my bed is where, like I just get to like really let it all go. You know, there's no guard up anymore. I lay the weapons down. It's just, there's, yes, that like peace and ease and safety and comfort. My bed is where I feel that. I remember one person saying the beach, like the ocean is where I feel that. Other people will say in nature, like I need to be surrounded by trees or mountains. And so I have shared, you know, to some degree before, that when I used to think about, or when I, to this day, need to access the embodiment of that energy, I personally think about my dad. And I think about, and I can recall, not just again in my mind, but in my body. I have the memory in my body of what it felt like to be in his embrace and in his hug or sitting in his lap. That for me is where I felt so comfortable and so protected and so safe that even now when I am stressed or scared or emotional, if I can envision, and this is why visualization can be so powerful as well, is like if I can envision myself having the feelings I'm having, but sitting in his lap or being in his hug, now I'm meeting it with safety. I'm creating safety around it. And so that is the purpose of the bubble, the safety bubble, is to bring that energy here now. And like I've said, I think at some point before, but it's worth reiterating, it doesn't need to be. So for some people, you can think about the people that you feel the safest with. You can think about the places that you have felt safe. And you can also use people and places and things that are not quote unquote real. And I think that is another really powerful thing where sometimes people will say, you know, my dad wasn't safe for me, or neither of my parents were safe for me, or I never had a safe adult. I don't know, you know, who do I envision? And sometimes I genuinely, this is not a joke or an exaggeration. I think about, like, for me, someone like Dumbledore in Harry Potter. I imagine being in the presence of Dumbledore would make me feel really safe, right? And so I'm saying this again because the purpose of the safety bubble is for you to access that energy and bring that here into your body right now, which you can do. And so it doesn't need to be any particular thing, but I love what my friend Bob here is doing, where he was talking about bubble practice. He was like, actually practicing being in the bubble on a walk. And that is, it's an invitation. It's an invitation to, you know, again, take it seriously, hold it gently, but take it seriously, because if you can practice your bubble, practice your safe space, practice embodying that energy, you will feel safer to do things like co-create and engage in intentional weight loss, which is really what we're here to talk about. Now, there's 2 follow-up things I just want to add to that I think are important. Number one is, you know, like I was talking about last time, this class that I'm in right now, we're talking about bottom-up interventions, really starting with the body. And then before that, we were doing a lot of top-down interventions. And a reflection that I had this week, because all of the, you know, I told you, like, I had to create a presentation about the article I read about trauma-informed weightlifting. But some of the other ones that my other classmates were working on were yoga, of course, dance movement, and sports, and trauma-informed sports programming for, you know, schools and things like that. And so all different kinds of movement, right? Because we're talking about somatic, body-centered interventions. And so one of the things that was this kind of theme among them for me is I started with mine around weightlifting. And one of the things I said was, you know, you really have to have the right mindset about it, which, you know, you guys have been hearing me talk about for weeks now, but you have to have the right mindset about it. Meaning, you know, if you are so conditioned, again, as you've heard me say, to think of yourself as just a physical being, and you are objectifying yourself, and the only way you know how to think about yourself is how you look and how you appear, then weightlifting becomes associated with aesthetics. And you're not doing things like the article talking about trauma-informed weightlifting is talking about. You're not focusing on interoception and how you feel in your body. You're not thinking about strengthening a mind-body connection. The intention around weightlifting is not healing from trauma, right? But so that's one mindset, is if you are objectifying yourself and doing it to look a certain way. But if your intention and your mindset is, I'm not doing this at all for how I look, I'm not doing this for the aesthetics of it, but I'm doing this because I want to heal from trauma and come back inside my body after severing or fragmenting the consciousness, right? And having this disconnect between mind and body, I am lifting weights so that I can feel things in my body again. Well, now you're doing the same exact exercise, but you're doing it for a very different reason and a very different intention. And so you're going to have a very different experience of it. And this is how, again, I talked about last time, you could do the same exact activity, but creating it in safety or creating it in danger is going to be based on your conscious input. And so then I see this common theme, among these presentations I was watching last week, where it's like, that's true for weightlifting, but that's also true for dance, right? Like any of you who've come to one of my retreats, when we start doing intuitive movement, sometimes that means dancing. And what very often comes up, just like with weightlifting, is our relationship with dance has been colored by how we look and how other people are judging us. And are we good at dancing? The same way that when we try things like art therapy, it becomes like, is this good? Is this artistic? And it's like, no. That's not what this is about. All of these things are modalities for self-expression. And so what I'm saying is, whether it's weightlifting or dancing or yoga or anything else that you're doing, sports included, you have to have the right mindset. And so while they are bottom-up approaches, they're not just bottom-up approaches. They have to be bottom-up approaches paired with the correct top-down approach, the correct way of thinking about it. The appropriate conscious input has to be part of that experience so that you can actually get the therapeutic value from it. And that's what we keep talking about in class. How do you have weightlifting be therapeutic? What makes it therapeutic? That was the question underneath all of this, is like, what makes something therapeutic? Because you can weightlift and not have it be therapeutic. You can dance and not have it be therapeutic. You could do yoga and not have it be therapeutic. If you're not at all connected to your experience of it in real time, and you are continuing to stay as disconnected and dissociated from your body the entire time you're moving it, well, is it therapeutic? Or are you potentially just using it as another way to perpetuate the cultural messaging that dance is only for how you look and weightlifting is only for how you look, right? It's so I'm saying this again because it's like, when it comes to quote unquote bubble practice, right? It's like you have to actually be pairing what's going on in your mind with what's going on in your body, which is what I was saying, a couple episodes ago about that is where the quote unquote, again, gates of the soul open. And that's why all of this to me is really about raising the consciousness. Like, in order for you to do something like intentional weight loss, you have to be pairing what's going on mentally and emotionally, spiritually, socially, and physically and physiologically. You have to have all of that in your awareness to do something, in my opinion, like safe, sustainable, intentional weight loss and have it work well, which is why, to me, this is necessarily now in the realm of spirituality. Like I said, again, 20-something episodes ago, I define spirituality as what's going on in the relationship you have with yourself. And so if you have to become conscious, present, and aware and embodied, this is a spiritual approach, because what we're doing is raising the level of consciousness. And again, all of this is about, this requires you to wake up. This requires you to wake up. And so that, again, is what all of this is for, whether it's weightlifting, yoga, dance, breathing, meditation, whatever. It's all inviting an elevated level of consciousness so you can be the spiritual being that you are, embodied in safety in your body, and again, take your power back and do what you want with it. So this is how we get there. It's top down and it's bottom up, because it necessarily has to be both. Okay, now, having said that, the other point I want to make here is, all right, so the bubble idea I originally got from John Gabriel's visualizations. So he would talk about, and I think I shared this, he would talk about the bubble, right, of it can stop trains and it can stop cars and like nothing can touch you in your bubble, right? Okay. All of that matters and is great, obviously, and I recommend that you do practice that. Now, here's the other thing that I just want to point out when it comes specifically to my experience with John Gabriel's visualizations, there are some, I believe that this is the like safe, strong, and protected one or something like that. There's a few that are, bubble adjacent around feeling safe in your body, which is really important. And he also used to have a lot of visualizations around feeling safe in your ideal body. And so what he would be inviting people to do is thinking about, and again, visualizing their ideal body and being in it. And what he would invite people to do is, think about like running on the beach or just like walking on the beach and feeling the sun and smelling the air and bringing, again, the whole point of the visualization is like bring that energy here now that you're like walking on the beach and you just feel so good and healthy and fit and strong. And then you start running just because it like feels so good and you want to, experience it. And what a lot of, in, again, my experience, what I heard, especially from women, but not always from women, was this feeling of like, it would feel really uncomfortable. Like it didn't resonate. It didn't work, because as soon as they started thinking of themselves in their ideal body, it felt kind of like diet culture-y to them. And that it was like, they didn't feel comfortable with that. And it's different for everyone. Some people, and this is going to be an ongoing theme, it's different for everyone. Some people hear that, feel that, and like love it. Now, the reason I want to talk about this for a second is because, again, what works for you works for you. And then it's kind of a segue into this whole episode, honestly, is what I would add to that, or what I might suggest someone practice in addition to that, or instead of that, is to have a visualization and work through a visualization that is around feeling safe in your body as it is right now. And so if, it feels uncomfortable, unsafe, it really doesn't resonate to think about being in your ideal body and being safe at that size, I would recommend doing a visualization that is similar. So maybe you're walking on the beach in your body as it is right now and creating safety in that, so that it can kind of lay the groundwork for you feeling safe in your body at a different size. But I think sometimes what gets missing there is, again, we're jumping ahead. It's like we're creating safety in the body that we want to be in, but we don't feel safe to be in the body that we're actually in. And so there's a gap there. And I think some of the time that's why that doesn't work and that doesn't land. So for whatever it's worth, that's an option. Okay, so now having said all of that, I want to talk about, all of this has been talking about intentional weight loss, but here we are. I want to talk about the beginning of intentional weight loss. And in order to do that, there are a couple concepts, theories that I want to discuss with you and review. If you haven't heard me talk about this yet, then welcome. But some of this, I think I covered in the intentional weight loss episodes a long time ago, but it's worth coming back to as a real foundation. So what I'm going to do is, again, especially if you're watching this on video, I'm going to be reading off my screen a couple things, because what I want to review is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs was created by Abraham Maslow in 1943 in a paper called A Theory of Human Motivation. So quick Google search, okay? Here's what Maslow's hierarchy of needs is: a psychological theory proposing that human motivation is driven by a 5-tier pyramid of needs, ranging from basic survival to self-actualization. Individuals must generally satisfy lower-level deficiency needs, physiological, safety, etc., before addressing higher-level growth needs, love, esteem, self-actualization. So that's a general sense. But now I'm going to walk you through the pyramid of it and what that really means. So the 5 levels of need. First is physiological needs, which are the basic survival necessities like air, food, water, shelter, and warmth. These are things that we literally need to survive. You will not survive without air. You will not survive without food or water or shelter or air or warmth. So that's number one. Okay. So number two, on top of that, now picture this like a pyramid. We're starting at the bottom. Number two, safety needs. Security, stability, protection from harm, including financial and health security. And this is why we could get into an entire whole thing about this, but this is why like not having basic needs met, like healthcare and other things, this is where it's not just about like the psychological safety, but how if we can't access certain things or we don't have the financial security and safety, that those are safety needs. Okay, so that's number two. Number three, making our way up the pyramid. Love and belonging needs. Social needs for relationships, friendship, intimacy, belonging to a group. Number four, on top of that, esteem needs. So the need for appreciation, respect, competence, and recognition for others. And then five, the top of the pyramid, or closer to the top of the pyramid, self-actualization needs, the highest level, representing the drive to realize one's full potential and personal growth. Okay, so here's the whole pyramid, 1 to 5. Now, there's another qualification I want to add here. Shout out to Google being AI now. Key aspects of the theory. Deficiency versus growth needs. This is all having to do with intentional weight loss, okay? Deficiency versus growth needs. The first 4 levels are deficiency needs, which arise due to deprivation, while the top level is growth need. Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. Progression. While not strictly linear, the theory suggests that, in general, lower level needs must be fairly well gratified before higher level needs emerge, right? So you can get the sense that the things at the bottom of the pyramid are the things you really need more of. You can't survive well without them. You don't need, in the same way, self-actualization. Okay. And so there are, of course, like any psychological theory that's ever existed, there are criticisms. And some people will say that it has been kind of debunked or that it's not entirely true or real. And that's fine because that's how it goes with theories. So we're not like, I think I said, like one of my professors keeps saying, it's like, you're not marrying any of these things. You're just like casually dating them because that's the energy you want to have. It's, hold it gently. Like, don't be too attached to it. But so we're using this as a theory. Now, here's why I'm talking to you about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Let's go back to the first one. Physiological needs, which include shelter, air, water, and, drumroll, food. Food, because we survive on food. Okay, so we need to have a stable relationship with food in order to feel safe. It's kind of like being, again, the child and the parent. In order for the child to feel safe in relationship with the parent, we need to know as the child that meals will be provided. We have to know that we're going to be fed. And so when we are in a relationship with food that is so informed by something like diet culture, and I will also say anti-diet culture, where it's not stable, regular, consistent, structured, intentional, present, when it's not those things, it's not grounded, it's erratic, and it's unreliable. And there's games being played. You have to earn your food. You have to be good enough for your food. There's perfectionism around food. Food is not stable and food is not safe. And so the physiological need that we have, in my opinion, is not just eating food. It is that. But it's also the psychological relationship and the psychology of feeding around it that is, in my opinion, part of level 1. And so my whole thing around it is, if you are not stable And again, consistent, regular, structured, aware, present, mindful, intentional, paying attention consciously to your relationship with food. You have no business moving up the pyramid, because it works the same way as Maslow's hierarchy, where you have to start there as a foundation, okay? And then you can make your way up the pyramid. And so the reason I'm saying all of this now is because I found another, and this is module 4 of my coaching program. So I found like the basic kind of 5 levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then I found one that is a little bit more elaborated. It's a little bit more in depth, and I think a little bit more applicable to the human experience, but specifically intentional weight loss. So I'm going to go through it again. We're starting again with physiological needs, okay? Water, shelter, food, air, okay? Then we have safety needs, like actually being safe. Then there's the belonging and love needs, and then esteem needs. Okay, so these are all the deficiency needs. These are the things we need. And then this is where it deviates a little bit, then on this pyramid that I'm looking at, then we get into cognitive needs, okay? Stay with me. This is why this matters. Then on top of that, we have aesthetic needs. And the little image is like this chick looking in the mirror. And then on top of that, we have self-actualization. And then on top of that is transcendence, which is, like at that point, you're like barely human. I think of that as like enlightenment, right? Okay. So we have aesthetic needs. We have aesthetic needs to look a certain way. Okay. So notice we have deficiency needs that go up through physiological, safety, belonging, esteem. Those are deficiency needs. Then we have growth needs that are cognitive needs, so like learning, growing, evolving. And then we have aesthetic needs on top of that. So how we look has made it onto the pyramid. And we have to be talking about this if we're talking about intentional weight loss. So now, okay, we have Maslow's hierarchy. We have aesthetic needs as it relates to Maslow's hierarchy. Now I'm going to bring it back to my 3 levels that I definitely talked about in the intentional weight loss episodes, but it's basically mapping Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a theory onto intentional weight loss. So this is what it looks like, and this is what we need to know before we get into how to do it. So for me, instead of 5 levels of a pyramid, I'm looking at 3 levels. And the reason that this became part of module 1 of the coaching program is because over and over again, I would get the question, okay, I want to heal my relationship with food and I want to feel better in my body, but also I want to lose weight. Where does the weight loss come in? And so I had to get very explicit and clear about the way that I taught this. So here's the orientation to the whole process. Now, Level one, I equate this to, or I compare it to crawling. So there's crawling, and then there's walking, and then there's running. You cannot run if you don't know how to walk, and you cannot walk before you crawl. So level 1, crawling. What this is about, high level overview, the title here, rebuild the mind-body connection, come back inside your body, and safety. So what this looks like, the bullet points that I have underneath that. How do you know that you're at level 1? Well, what you're working on is awareness. So as, again, you have heard me say 100,000 times at this point, you can't do anything about something you are not aware of. So you have to bring the awareness to yourself, your feelings, your habits, you have to start being aware, okay? And that's part of the waking up of it all. Awareness, mindfulness, and truth-telling. So again, you're not living in pre-contemplation where you're just kind of like kicking the can down the curb and denying it and looking away from it. No, level 1 is you're starting to be aware and tell the truth. These are my habits. This is how it's affecting me. This is what's been going on. Okay? So that's the first thing. You're unlearning and processing the impact of diet culture. So this is where, again, this is aligned with like the principles of intuitive eating, where it's like we have to reject the diet mentality 100%. We definitely need to do that. That's part of level 1, is you have to get out of diet thinking. And I could say so much about that, but it is so insidious. And what I've seen over and over and over again, and I would really, like, if you want a homework assignment, you can practice this, is draw the awareness to the thoughts that you have that are still rooted in diet culture, what you can and can't eat, your good and bad food dialogue, everything around, time and macros and like all the things around how it should be. That stuff is in there deep. And that's all part of level 1. You have to get out of diet mentality if you're going to stabilize around food. Okay. And feel safe stabilizing around food. All right. Neutralizing food, all part of level 1. So there is no such thing as good food and bad food anymore. We are releasing that whole paradigm. Stabilizing physically and emotionally. So this is where I talk about having physical solutions and emotional solutions to your problems. So you're not trying to solve an emotional problem with a physical solution. You're not using food as your primary coping mechanism. And this is where I like to clarify once again, emotional eating is not bad. Emotional eating is not wrong. You don't have to stop emotionally eating. The problem for a lot of us is that eating and food or dieting and weight loss have become the only or the primary coping mechanism. So the problem is not that it's a tool in the toolbox. The problem is that you're doing it when you don't want to do it. The problem is that it's out of control. The problem is that it's compulsive. The problem is that you are not empowered. Okay. And so again, this is review, but that's what we want to pay attention to. And so this is where in level 1 of 3, you are practicing eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full, and having other coping mechanisms for when you are emotional. So you're not using food as a way to cope primarily. So, okay, then the last bullet before I get into it is quote unquote abstinence from emotional eating, also known as emotional sobriety. So it's all saying the same thing, that is food and eating is not the primary way of coping. And because we don't have the option of abstinence, like we talked about in the last episode, from eating or food or our bodies or our relationship with ourselves or our relationship with any of these things, the next best thing that we're going to practice is abstinence from emotional eating. And so this is where the granular practice is: eat food when you're hungry. Stop eating food when you are full, and do not eat for emotional purposes. Now, again, this is not a life sentence. This isn't where you're going to be forever. This is, you're practicing being at level 1 because right now your relationship with food is driven by so many things that, again, as I've shared here before, sometimes I talk to people and they're saying, if I'm not eating for emotional purposes, I have no idea why I'm eating. Like, the only reason that I ever eat is because I'm bored or lonely or stressed or sad, right? And it's like, okay, that is super valid, and we do not need to judge or shame that. And if you want to stabilize in your relationship with food, if you want something like safe, sustainable, intentional weight loss, this is why you're practicing this, for the sake of your own safety and stability around food. This is why you're practicing this. Eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, and then practice using other things to meet those emotional needs. Now, the important thing to me about level 1, and I used to say this in my coaching program, is that's what this program is about reconnecting the mind-body system. Because of trauma and because of life and because of being a human, the mind and body have become disconnected. You are living in a fragmented system. And if you want something like safe, sustainable, intentional weight loss, this is step 1. You have to feel safe in your body and with yourself and around food. And this is how we establish that. So to me, and this is where I think this is likely the thing that nobody wants to hear, but that I think is really true, is that you might be at level 1 for years. You might be at level 1 for years. You might be at level 1 for years. Because if you have been in a relationship with food where it is primarily emotional and you don't feel hunger and you don't feel fullness and all you do is eat to cope, and eating is your primary way of managing your stress and regulating your feelings, it will not happen overnight that you just learn how to feel your feelings without using food, right? And so that I think is a really, really important part of this. That is, it might take some time and it will require practice. Yes. And this is also why I have a major bone to pick with the principles of intuitive eating and the outline of how to, quote unquote, how to heal your relationship with food according to them, is because somewhere in that book, oh my God, I wish I could find, I don't know where my copy of it is, but in that book, what they suggest is that if you stop using food to cope, you'll just learn how to do that. You'll just stop using food as a coping mechanism, and you'll, quote unquote, just like figure out how to feel your feelings without it. And it's like, oh my God, this book was not written by mental health professionals who understand how the nervous system works, because that's not how it goes. You will need time and practice and support and skills and tools and education and safety to learn how to not use food as your primary way of coping. And you might have to experience a lot of discomfort and a lot of withdrawal. And that's where the tender self-compassion comes in. So anyway, the whole point here is, this is level 1. We want to talk about intentional weight loss. We're here. We're talking about intentional weight loss. But this is why when, someone said to me recently, I want to be working on intentional weight loss, but right now I'm still like binging and purging. And so it's hard for me to think about like releasing the goal of weight loss when that's really what I want. But I understand that right now what I have to work on and focus on is stabilizing around food and stabilizing my behaviors around food. And what I was saying to her is, I genuinely believe that you can hold both at the same time. Yes, this does need to be your focus right now. However, as I was saying weeks ago, it's about knowing where you are in the process. So it's about knowing that intentional weight loss is at level 3, but you're at level 1. We're talking about you being able to safely engage with something like intentional weight loss, and you stabilizing around binging and purging. That's step 1. And so it is, and this is why, again, for me, it is important to have this kind of context, because if I'm talking to someone who's in, like I was, according to the BMI chart, quote unquote, morbidly obese body, it doesn't work for me to just say, well, stop working on weight loss and only focus on stabilizing your behaviors. It's more about stabilizing your behaviors as the first step to intentional weight loss, which again, we covered. So anyway, this is step 1. And as I'm saying here, kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you are not stable, if you don't have regular access to food and water and shelter and air, you have no business working on, your esteem needs and like learning new things. Like, no, you need safety first. You need stability first. And so if you are not able to practice, at least generally most of the time, eating when you're hungry for physical purpose, or homeostatic hunger, and using other ways of, if you don't have any other coping mechanisms in your toolbox, you have no business talking about or pursuing something like intentional weight loss. It's just, we got to work our way up the pyramid. This is the out of the cave pyramid. Okay. So that's level 1. Now, level 2. What is level 2? So let's say now, all right, you've laid a foundation. You're not binging, you're not purging, you're not acting compulsively around food. You have a foundation of you eat when you're hungry. Most of the time, you're stopping when you're full. You have a bunch of other coping mechanisms for when you get stressed and when you get emotional. You're doing things like journaling and meditating. You have safe relationships and you have social support. You're sleeping, you're hydrating, okay? You're taking care of yourself. You have a foundation of quote unquote emotional sobriety. You have made your way. You're not thinking diet culture thoughts anymore. You're not thinking about eating less, and you're not thinking, right? Okay. You've made your way out of all that. And this is a feat. Okay. Level 1 is no small thing. So now you have that foundation. Now what's level 2? Okay. Level 2 is walking. Now you got really good at crawling. Now you're going to start walking. All right. So walking is introducing the mind-body approach to food and eating. So now you have a mind-body system that is much more in connection. Okay? So you're not mind in one place, body in another, eating food unconsciously on autopilot as the primary way of coping. Now you have other tools for that. And so you introduce the mind-body approach to food and eating specifically. What do I mean by that? Now you're talking about things like adding in and crowding out. So you are paying attention to what you're eating. Okay? You are connecting your mind to your body through the relationship you have with food. You're paying attention to what you're eating and you're being intentional about it. Okay? Which is why you have to get out of not just diet culture mentality. You also have to release anti-diet culture mentality, which we'll talk way more about. But this is where in level 2, you're starting to pay attention. You're starting to be intentional. Because again, if this matters to you, you have to be highly involved. And if you are not intentional about it, what you're buying, what you're serving, what you're preparing, how you're eating, if you're not intentional about it, I'm not saying perfect about it, but if you are not intentional about it, who else is going to be? No one else is going to do this. No one can save you. No one's going to do this. Okay? So you're introducing the mind-body approach to food and eating. So you're adding in and you're crowding out. What that means is you're adding in real, whole, natural, healthy, live foods. You are focusing on getting an adequate amount of things like fruits and vegetables. You are thinking about something like protein, macronutrients. You are thinking about fiber. You are being intentional about what you're feeding yourself. So you're adding things in on purpose. You are not thinking about restricting things. You are not thinking about eliminating things. You're not thinking about eating less because that is the energy. It carries the energy of scarcity and lack, right? You're not thinking about that. You're thinking about adding in more fruit, more vegetables, more real foods. And I've given you this example before, but I literally mean this. Like I had this call with a client many years ago where she said, I'm eating bags of popcorn for dinner. This was during COVID time. She said, I'm eating bags of microwave popcorn for dinner. And I said, cool. Can you keep your microwave bag of popcorn and add an apple? And she was like, okay, yeah, I could do that. So this is where in level 2, you're starting to do things like that. You are adding things in. You're not restricting and eliminating. Nothing is off limits. You are adding in. Okay. Then you're also focusing on quality over quantity. You're not being, again, rigid and perfectionistic about how many calories you're eating or how many macros or grams or anything like that. You're not doing all of that. We're not in level 3. We are in level 2. So your focus is on quality. What is the quality of the food that you're eating? How is it going to impact the way that your body feels? You are connecting your mind to your body. So what are you actually feeding yourself and getting intentional about quality of food? And again, not perfect, intentional. So you're thinking about these things. Another thing in level 2 to me is you're focusing more on the ingredients of your food than the calories of your food. So again, not all calories are created equally. And part of level 2 for me is, this is where in my program, module 5 is nutrition, because the way I talk about it, I don't tell you what to eat. I tell you what you're eating. So there's integrating the nutritional education into this component of level 2, where you're looking at ingredients so you can pay attention to how much of certain things are in your food. And the example I always think about here is like, granola, for example. Granola is a food that, for whatever reason, we have come to believe is like a quote-unquote health food. But a lot of granolas, if you start getting educated and informed about what's actually in it, and you flip over the package and you look at the ingredients, not the calories. Don't get distracted by the calories. If you go straight to the ingredients to get curious about what are you actually putting in your body, not from a place of good food, bad food, not from a place of right and wrong, not from a place of this food makes me feel pride and this food makes me feel shame, because that's danger and safety. We're not doing that. If you are looking at ingredients with the intention of, is this something that's going to serve me? Is this something that's going to feel good to me? Is this something that I want? Is this the gas I want to put in my engine? Okay. Because from a place of self-love and self-care, because my job is to take care of this car, this vehicle that I'm driving. Is this what I want to put into it? Okay. When you're looking at ingredients, you might flip over the pack of granola and see that sugar is number 1. And again, this is not about demonizing sugar. This is not about don't eat sugar. This is about the fact that if you want to be healthy and you want to take your health into your own hands, because no one can do this for you and the food industry is doing everything it can to make sure that you don't do this. If you want to take this into your own hands, this is what it looks like. So you're starting to look at things like ingredients so that you are educated and you are informed in your intention to put the gas in your engine that's going to fuel you in a way that feels good. And as part of that, okay, the last bullet on level 2 here, whole real foods as nourishment. So you are, again, you are intentional about what you're putting into your body and not eating primarily, hyper palatable, highly processed foods. You are paying attention to fueling your body with real food rather than food-like products, which is, by the way, about 80 to 85% of every American grocery store. And for what it's worth, I'm not going to get into the whole thing here again, but for me, level 2 is really captured by practicing the division of responsibility. The division of responsibility is Ellen Satter's theory around how to, and this is module 7 of my program, is teaching the child job and the parent job, okay? So for level 2, for me, this is where you as the parent, you're putting your parent hat on when you do things like go to the grocery store and decide what food is coming into your home. Part of the parent job is also making meal times, again, structured and regular and consistent and reliable, because that signals safety around food. That's your job as the parent, because again, no one can do this for you. You are the parent now. You are the adult now. No one is coming and buying your groceries for you. No one is coming and putting your meals together for you. This is your responsibility. And so part of level 2 is living that way, where you are intentional about what's coming home, you're intentional about what's on your plate, you are present in your experience of it. And again, when you feel like you want to eat, but you're not hungry, it's not just about the physical parts of parenting, like buying the food and eating the food, but it's also about the emotional parenting. That is, right now, we are practicing stabilizing around food, and what that means is we're not eating because we feel bored. We're practicing not eating out of loneliness. And one of the things that might support you in that and help you with that is not bringing certain foods into the home. And so this is all level 2, because this is where you become, again, the parent. This is where you become the one taking care of you specifically around food. So you're creating the safety, stability, structure, routine, discipline, connection, and mindfulness around it that is required so that you can then arrive at level 3, where I put intentional weight loss. Okay. So all of this is why there's been 22 episodes of getting to this point where you need, I think, to know how the ins and outs of something like, yes, the division of responsibility, but also the division of responsibility to me is the embodiment of tender and fierce self-compassion happening together and being blended, because it's about taking action, and primarily, really, what it's about at the end of the day is having boundaries with yourself. It's about being willing and able to practice saying no to yourself. But I want to eat because I'm stressed out, and having that moment of, I know that you really want to use food right now because it has served this emotional purpose your entire life. I know. And that is okay. It is okay that you want to do this. It is okay that you have this craving and this urge. There's nothing wrong with you. You are not at fault. And, right, it's not bad. We're not demonizing it. And we are practicing not doing it. So there's a behavior change component to it that is the fierce self-compassion, but there is the tender self-compassion of that, again, mothering energy of, I see you, I hear you, I know that this is hard, I know that you are going through withdrawal, I know. It's okay. I'm here with you. We can do this, okay? All of this is level 2. And if you are not, so this is why I feel so strongly about this, is constantly you can probably imagine how often people are saying to me, but what about the weight loss? What about the weight loss? When can I be, when can I get to weight loss? And it's like, that's kind of like you prioritizing how good you look when you don't have regular access to air. It's like, no, we cannot go in that order if we want it to be safe and sustainable, which is what all this is about. Okay. So you have level 1 and then you have level 2. Now, level 3. Level 3 is where you run. You got good at crawling, so you started walking. And now you're getting good at walking. Okay, now you can run. So, as I said, crawling is rebuilding the mind-body connection. 2, walking, introduce the mind-body connection to your relationship with food through essentially the division of responsibility. And reparenting. This is, again, why I always say we're using the relationship you have with food is the mechanism through which you learn how to reparent yourself. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're learning how to do things like set boundaries, practice high involvement, low attachment, radical acceptance, self-compassion, all of this level 2 because you're becoming the parent now, physically and emotionally. Great. Now level 3, running. Steer in the direction of your goals from a loving and connected place. So, you now are, you got comfortable behind the driver's seat. Now you know how to drive the mind, body, soul system that you're in, especially around food and eating. And so now you can steer it. Now you can steer the car. Where do you want to go? This is where, to me, now we can talk about quote unquote clean eating. We can talk about intentional weight loss. We can talk about making changes physically. We're going to change this thing in the physical dimension, right? Maybe this is where you start practicing restraint. Oh, I want to eat that thing, but I also want to create something like a caloric deficit so I can be in intentional weight loss, and I'm going to have feelings about that. Oh, this is uncomfortable. God, I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed. I'm grieving that I cannot eat all the food I want to eat, which would put me in a caloric surplus and also be in a caloric deficit at the same time, because life is a choice between what hurts and what hurts worse, and that third option doesn't exist where I get to have everything I want all the time because I'm no longer a child. I'm an adult. I'm the parent here, and I understand that now. Okay, so level 3 is where you get to steer your connected mind, body, soul system in whatever direction you want. You don't want intentional weight loss? Great, fine. Then this doesn't apply to you. And that's totally cool because you move through level 1 and level 2. You are parenting yourself around food. And sometimes that's all it takes for people to realize, wait, I don't have a weight issue. I don't have a food issue. I feel really good and comfy here. Great. Now, if you are someone that does want to engage in intentional weight loss, what I'm saying to you is you cannot go to level 3 before you move through 1 and 2. It's very much like Maslow's hierarchy in this way where it's like, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to check all the boxes and see it every single day, but it does need to be kind of a lifestyle that you're comfortable in before you move to the next part. Okay. So these are the 3 levels where intentional weight loss is and can very much be part of the conversation, but we've got to go in order. And it's very much like the stages of change. And it's very much like, as you keep hearing me say, you're not going to go from pre-contemplation to action. You're not going to go from your comfort zone to your danger zone. You are not going to go from level 1 to level 3. You're not going to go from completely unconscious to practicing discipline and restraint around food and have it feel safe and be sustainable. It's an unrealistic expectation. Okay. So, I think at this point, you get what I'm saying here. Now, the reason that I want to come back now to Maslow's hierarchy and the elaborated pyramid that I found is because aesthetic needs, okay? In the intentional weight loss episodes I did years ago, I shared there that the reason that I was intentionally losing weight was also similarly because I had gained weight. And in that experience, the reason that I had gained weight was emotional. And so what I had to do in that experience was stop using food as a coping mechanism, which is really to say, start leaning on my support system and start using other things to cope with my feelings so that I was doing less eating, drinking, smoking, all the things that were contributing to my weight gain. I stabilized emotionally. And some of the time, and I really, really genuinely believe this to be true, that is in order to know what the solution is, we have to know what the problem is. So if the root of the problem, meaning the root of the weight gain, is emotional dysregulation, then the solution is you have to stabilize emotionally. Great. But sometimes that's not the case. And in this specific instance of my most recent weight loss, that again has got me to like 16 something percent body fat. So low in body fat on the, the athletic side of the spectrum. This most recent weight loss was not this most recent weight gain was not rooted in emotion. It was rooted in life. Like you've heard me say, if you started at the beginning of the solo series, it was like going out a lot, holidays, seeing friends, vacations, putting on weight from just living my life. And then I intentionally decided I wanted to lose that weight and keep it going. So the reason I'm bringing it back here is because this most intentional weight loss for me was not about stabilizing emotionally. This intentional weight loss, getting myself to the level of leanness that I am at right now, was coming from this place of like an aesthetic goal to get to a certain, honestly, I don't know. I never had a goal weight. I never had a body fat percentage in mind. I just wanted I wanted to move through the process of pursuing an aesthetic goal. I did. And that's what I did. And so the reason this matters in context is because to me, this is what a lot of people want. So yes, I have been in a place before where I was over 300 pounds and the desire to lose weight was genuinely not an aesthetic thing as much as it was a quality of life thing. I wanted to ride an airplane without a seatbelt extender. I wanted to go skydiving. I wanted to ride a roller coaster without getting kicked off of it. I wanted to stop getting stress fractures in my feet. I wanted to stop getting back pain every time I walked for more than 5 minutes. My body was limiting me and getting in the way, and I wanted to lose weight. And so not everyone has over 100 pounds to lose. Not everyone is going to experience a dramatic shift in quality of life and accessibility by losing weight. And so for me, this most recent experience of weight loss feels much more, I don't want to use the word like normal or like average, but it's just less extreme, where I was starting in a healthy place, ending in a healthy place. And if I didn't lose any weight at all, I was still healthy. I was still strong. I was still fit. I was still able to move and move freely and have access to anything that I needed, like clothing has not been an issue, right? It's like I wasn't doing weight loss because my body was a problem. My body was not getting in the way. My size was not a problem. My health was not a problem. This was recreational weight loss. It was like literally kind of for fun. And so that to me feels important because it was in some ways this growth need. It wasn't a deficiency need. It wasn't about feeling safe. It wasn't about feeling able to exist culturally, socially, physically. It was coming from a place of like, I'm literally fine as I am, but I want to see what my potential is. And so how lean can I get? How strong can I get? How much body recomposition can I experience? And so it was coming from this place that is much more toward the higher part of the pyramid, where do I need this? No. Will my life dramatically change? Definitely not. Will my life change, like, even, in minor ways? Not really. Like, literally, the only real change that I've had to deal with is my clothes don't fit anymore. So like physically that is true. But like, do I have access to all the same things that I did before? Yeah. Is my life any different on a day-to-day basis? No, literally no. More people are making comments about my body, which I will come back and say more about, but like nothing is different. It was a growth need, and it really feels, I'm going to say so much about this in the next episode, about coming from this place of like, what can I do? I'm fine where I am. I am whole and complete, safe, present, embodied, connected, where I am as I am, you know, as I was 40 pounds ago. I was good. And also, what can I do? What can I do? And that's where this was coming from. So I want to go back to having said all of that. Now, all right, the 3 levels that I identify. Okay, so for me, intentional weight loss connected to aesthetic goals, clean eating, things like that. Okay, all of that is level 3, right? But when I look back on my own journey of recovery and healing and health, I did a lot of things, I don't want to say wrong, but there are a lot of things that I would not advise you to do. And I've learned to say it that way because I wouldn't necessarily go back and do anything different. I wouldn't do anything differently. But I would not advise you to do some of the things that I did. Like, I have a period of time where I was literally eating 500 calories a day because I thought that that was going to keep the weight off. Yeah. So there are a lot of things that I did take to an extreme. And there are a lot of things that I did right. There are a lot of things I did right along the way. And I want to use my own story as an illustration of how these kind of levels have played out. Because I think about how disconnected I was from my body, how fragmented my mind-body system was, how it wasn't on my radar yet that I felt, quote unquote, felt unsafe in my body. I didn't even know my body. My body was a foreign object. And so that was true while I was growing up, and food was my primary drug and way of coping. I would say primary and only real coping mechanism in line with denial, pretending, dissociation, disconnection. Food and eating helped me stuff it all down. And so all of that was like the first, 18 or so years of my life. Then I swung the pendulum and I started losing weight. And there was nothing about, no, I want to take that back. Not nothing. There were parts of my intentional weight loss back then that helped me wake up. Right. So I had to start paying attention to what I was eating. It was the very, very, very beginning, for the first time in my life, around 20 years old, as you've been hearing me say, piecing things together. And I remember thinking that when it came to food and eating, I always said it felt like everyone got a memo that I didn't get about like how your relationship with food is supposed to work. And an example that I used to talk about is like when I would hear my friends say certain things like, I'm not going to have pizza for dinner. I had pizza for lunch. And at the time, and this was like when I was in college, and I would hear things like that and be like, why? Like, why wouldn't you have pizza for dinner if you also had it for lunch? Like, I didn't, and it felt like people would talk about food in a way that it confused me. Like, I felt like I was left out of it. Like, I didn't understand why it felt like everyone seemed to understand these, like, basic common sense things about food, and I didn't. But I know now that it was because food was not food to me. Food was a drug to me. Food was coping. Food was numbing. Food was suppressing. Food was not food. And so I didn't know things that felt like to other people were common sense about it. And so I had to start paying attention to food and eating as I started losing weight, and that was the very beginning of that. So there was a lot about actually my intentional weight loss back then that was kind of like slowly waking me up to being conscious and present, and not just conscious and present in a general sense, but conscious and present around my own body and what I was putting into it. And so you can see where these levels come from. So that's what was happening. But at the same time, I was still so disconnected from my body, which is why I started eating less. Yeah, I was paying attention to food and eating. I was eating less. I was exercising more. I was going through the motions. I had to be mindful and intentional about putting myself through the motions. And at the same time, that is how I swung the pendulum so far into restriction and elimination and malnourishment and starvation, because I was still so disconnected from my body that I could be so tired and I could be so fatigued, and I got myself to a point where I was so starved and malnourished that my hair was falling out and I was freezing all the time, and I stopped getting my period. That's how that was possible. I was so dissociated that I really had no idea what was going on in my body. I just knew I was losing weight because I was really happy. Dopamine. Okay. So again, I'm saying all of this because I did not do these 3 levels. I didn't go in this order. I didn't become stable in my relationship with food physically. I didn't stop using food as my primary way of coping before I started weight loss, which is why dieting and weight loss became my primary way of coping. I was still completely disconnected from myself. There was no adult mindset. There was no responsibility for my health. It was all about weight. So I didn't do any of level 1. And that's why I got myself into that place that I got myself. And then I learn I'm in starvation mode. I have to eat more. I have to exercise less. I start working with a nutritionist and a therapist at this time to help me stabilize physically and emotionally. And so this is really where I started waking up on a much deeper level, because it wasn't, again, just about food and eating. It was about the fact that now I can't use food and eating as my primary ways of coping. I can't use dieting and exercise and weight loss as my primary ways of coping. And I had to learn how to feel feelings. And this is where I was going through all this withdrawal, and it was this huge upheaval of literally like a lifetime of suppressed emotion, stress, trauma, etc. Okay. This is where I started learning how to practice things like abstinence from emotional eating, using food as the primary way of coping, emotional sobriety, things like that. And it was during this time when I was, as I shared in the last episode, being very mindful and conscious about my input, what I was telling myself. It used to be focused on calories. Now it's focused on ingredients. Again, module 6. It used to be focused on restriction. Now it's focused on balance. It used to be eat as little as possible. Now it's eat enough. And I had to keep focusing my attention where I wanted it to go, which was in the direction of recovery and level 2, and eating whole, real, natural foods, and really working very hard to get out of the diet mentality. So this is where, again, it's like the heavy lifting, the hardest part of all of this stuff was going on in my head. It was having to redirect my focus and intention over and over and over again, because I would think about food. All food was calories to me. So I had to rewire my mind. And I remember the first time, I remember exactly where I was standing in a grocery store. The first time I was training my brain, very much like my friend Bob doing his bubble practice very intentionally. You have to be highly involved. I was highly involved in the way I was thinking about food. And I had to train my brain over and over and over. If you're watching this, you see me. I'm using my hand to go down, 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 because that was the experience of don't look at the calories, look at the ingredients. Don't look at the calories, look at the ingredients. Don't look at the calories, look at the ingredients. And that was I was training myself very much. Again, I will bring it back to when I was 5 years old and my baby sister died, and every single time I thought about Rebecca, it was, I will not think about this. I will not think about this. I will not think about this. I have been practicing this for decades. And now I got to apply it to my relationship with food and eating. And so that's exactly what I was doing, was do not think about this, think about this. Do not think about this, think about this. And I had to keep getting myself out of diet mentality. And so I remember where I was standing the first time I flipped over the package of food and my eyes went directly to the ingredients. And I remember being like, yes, I did it. I did it. I am rewiring my system and I am clawing my way out of diet mentality because I fucking was. And I think that it really takes that intention. It takes that effort. You have to put it in. You have to put the reps in. And that's how you rewire. So again, I started doing things like this. I was embodying level 2. That is, I have to be intentional about food. I want to take care of my body. I don't want to gain all the weight back. And I also don't want to have an eating disorder. So what does it look like to take care of myself, to be loving around food and loving toward myself or with my relationship with food? How do I show up and be the parent? I don't even think I knew anything about the word reparenting. No, I was 21 years old. This was not on my radar yet, that this is what was happening. But this is what I did. And so this is where, again, I did a lot of things right. Because at this point in my journey, I was so non-negotiable about my meditation practice, even though I fucking hated it. I was non-negotiable about things like breath work and yoga and journaling. They all felt weird to me. All of this was outside my comfort zone. But I was non-negotiable about healing and recovery. Because I knew that if I didn't take this mind, body, soul approach, I was either going to gain all the weight back or live with disordered eating for the rest of my life. And I didn't want to do either of those things. So I prioritized recovery. This is where I stopped getting on the scale. And I started seeing that diet culture mentality is like any other addiction. It's like any other addiction. And if I'm not paying attention to how I need to take responsibility for rewiring my own mind and my own mindset and my own thoughts and patterns, it was not going to happen by itself. I was going to keep going back to diet mentality. And so that's what I did. I stopped getting on the scale, even though I was really fucking scared. I stopped counting calories, even though I was really scared. I intentionally practiced as much abstinence around dieting and weight loss as I did around using food as the primary way of coping. And this is where, again, it became clear to me that you cannot, as I say in Module 5, you cannot be intuitive around hunger and fullness until you are coping with your emotions in a way that is not dieting and weight loss or food and eating. We have to stabilize in the relationship with food. You have to be at the bottom of the pyramid before you get to the top of the pyramid. And so that's what I did. I did all of these things and I worked really, really hard. And my point here is when I was at that place of prioritizing recovery, making my goal eating enough rather than eating less, making my goal balance over restriction, all of these things, when I was in that place, I knew that I could not focus on my weight. I had to, at least temporarily, release the goal of weight loss so that I could focus on my recovery. Hard stop. It had to come first because I knew that if I didn't feel, again, safe and stable and intentional and present in my relationship with food and eating, there was no way that I was going to lose weight again in a healthy way. No. So that's what I did. And as part of that, as again, you've heard me say before, I gained about 30 pounds from my lowest weight. I gained about 30 something pounds to restore my body and recover my body from the trauma of my extreme weight loss. So what I'm saying here is I did this. I did this and I know this in my bones because I've lived it, that I chose recovery, even though it meant weight gain, over losing weight and even maintaining my weight. There were times where I had to say, if what I need for long-term sustainable health and well-being is to put more weight on my body, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to do it. And the reason I think that this is really important to me is because there are a lot of people that I have worked with and talked to and might be listening to this that are not willing to be in level 1. They're not willing to be in level 2. All it is, can I take action? Can I take action? Can I take action? And it's like, I don't know. Are you in pre-contemplation? Are you in contemplation? We have to go one step at a time. And again, it can feel scary. Sure, I can validate. It feels scary and uncomfortable to release the goal of weight loss, an intentional weight loss. But if you, again, are not feeling safe and stable, and there is no adult in the room, if there is no parent home in the house, in your relationship with food and eating right now, you must prioritize that first. Because again, safety is the foundation. Safety is the foundation. You feeling safe here right now in your body as it is, making decisions around food intentionally. You have to feel safe doing that before you can practice taking things away from yourself that you might want. Before you can, kind of poke the bear that will come out when you start saying, all right, we're going to start practicing intentional weight loss, which means we might have to change things about the way you're eating. You're going to have to know how to cope with that. You're going to have the skills and tools to be on your own team for that. You cannot go to level 3 without level 2, and you cannot go to level 2 without level 1. Now, okay. I'm going to continue to build on this, obviously. But for now, I'm going to say that, now I hesitate to say this because I don't want to make it like more complicated and confusing, but things are nuanced, so I'm just going to tell the truth about it. What I'm going to do is, again, continue to build on this and elaborate and give you more, concrete kind of details of what I mean about how to integrate this. But the seed that I want to plant goes back to something that I said episodes ago, I think, where I was talking about how this foundational work, feeling safe with yourself emotionally, radical acceptance, self-compassion, high involvement, low attachment, all that stuff is the foundation, and that has to come first. And then I also slipped in there, or at least simultaneously. Okay? So it has to come first, or at least simultaneously. And I just want to voice that what I mean by that is you don't necessarily, now again, it's like you have to know the rules so you can break the rules, okay? The rules are Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The rules are level 1, level 2, level 3, linear, okay? But also, I use this example in my coaching program. You maybe have heard me say this too, but like the idea of like when I was first taught, you can't start a sentence with the word but, and then I would like read books and see sentences that started with the word but, and it was like, wait, hold on, I thought I knew the rule. And it's like, well, you have to learn how to write a certain way before you can start breaking the grammar rules. This is similar to that. It's like, I just gave you all the rules. Now I can talk about the nuance of it. What I mean when I say it has to happen simultaneously is, let's say you're at level 1 and food is still the primary way of coping, and you want to do something like engage in intentional weight loss. Well, part of the expanded definition of what I mean when I say we're using the relationship with food as the mechanism through which you learn how to reparent yourself is you can start practicing making some changes, potentially even with thinking about intentional weight loss down the line. You can think about making some of those changes with, again, the goal of intentional weight loss, and have that be the very thing that calls you to practice reparenting. And so that's what I mean when I say it can happen simultaneously, is that if you're thinking about pursuing intentional weight loss, that's okay and that's fine. But all of these principles, these foundational principles, must be embedded in the approach toward intentional weight loss. So even if you're at level 1 or at level 2, if you're starting to do things like, eat a certain way, and again, I'm going to say so much more about this in much more detail moving forward. This is just, again, a little taste of the complexities of it, is that if you're paying attention to what you're eating because you know that you want to intentionally lose weight, you are doing so in a way where food is neutral. It's not good and bad. It's not a game of shame and pride. You are being on your own team. You are being loving. You are being balanced and gentle and trauma informed. It's like you can take action, but it has to have these principles embedded in it while you are moving forward. And so, anyway, that's what I mean by that. So, we have made it now over an hour, but we've made it to where I'm going to wrap today and then come back to, I'm going to say more about how to engage with something like intentional weight loss when it's coming from being driven by an aesthetic goal. So again, we're not thinking about life will change dramatically or that it's a health issue, but how do we do it when it's like, yeah, I do want to lose 10 pounds because I want to look leaner. Like, yeah, how do we do that in a safe way? How do we hold that with being a spiritual being and have a very loving approach that is trauma informed and also possible? So much more to say about all of this. That's where it's going. And then we're going to talk again, just about the kind of more granular principles. You've got all the internal stuff. Now we have to talk about, again, bringing it back into the physical dimension, how to do that, what integration looks like. So that's where we're going. Now, I think that's it. If you have not yet, please rate, review, subscribe, and share this podcast with your people. And if you need anything from me, you have any other questions about the pod or anything that I'm talking about, lisaschlossberg@gmail.com. And I will see you at Omega, July 12th to the 17th. And I will also come back and see you next week. Okay, I love you. Goodbye.